Hi everyone, my name is Shanice and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be going through the 2024 TBR list for a series I've been doing. I think this is my third year now. It's called Reading Through Latin America. In the past, I chose 12 books each year. I tried to pick a book by an author that wasn't as well known in the country that I chose. I wanted to represent as many different countries within Latin America as I could. And just one year with 12 selections, you can't really do that. So I hope with each year that comes, I get to just explore a different identity, a different heritage, just a different part of the various Latin American cultures. As I have mentioned in those previous TBR videos that I made, there is not an agreed upon definition for Latin America, and therefore there's not really an agreed upon definition for Latin American. But I am working with the, I guess, most popular definition online. It is disputed. Many people have different opinions on it. According to that definition, there are 14 dependencies and 20 official countries that are technically in Latin America. And so if on this list you see a country and you're maybe scratching your head, just know that I'm working with that definition, and it's good to maybe challenge our conceptions that maybe have sprung from inaccuracies to begin with. So I'm just putting that out there, and yeah, I love curating these types of lists. I've mentioned that when I made my Big Books Challenge TBR list earlier this year. I love discovering new authors. I love the hard work and the long hours online, just finding books that, you know, aren't the typical. I feel like I'm learning a little bit more about myself as a Dominican American. And just so you know, I do read these books in the original Spanish. I will share my little update on how last year's Reading Across Latin America series went. Spoiler, I bombed. I am basic at reading Portuguese, although I can understand a lot of it. And French, I think, you know, even less than Portuguese. So I really only feel comfortable reading Spanish, not Portuguese or French. So for this TBR, I will be reading the Spanish editions, and if the other editions were originally in Portuguese or French, I am just going to read the English translations. So just as a little overview of last year's TBR, I chose 12 books. I will link the video of last year's TBR list up here somewhere. Last year, of the 12 that I chose, I read 7. So yes, 5 are still outstanding, but this year I'm really focused and really determined to finish this book challenge that I've given myself. I've also just been a little bit more realistic and reduced the number of books on the TBR, and given me more time to read one book. Instead of just the limit of a month, I have chosen, you know, one book for 2 months, and picked different books of different lengths throughout the year, so it's not overwhelming for me. I also have included in this year's TBR list some books from previous lists that I did not read those years, so you might see some familiar titles here. You know, once again, the disclaimer must be said that I have chosen these books. These are in no way a full representation of the different Latin American races, religions, identities, countries. It's such a rich region. Linguistically, geographically, there's just so much diversity in it. So these few books will never encompass all of it, but I have tried my best to reflect some of it. So without further ado, let's begin with the book that I am currently reading. It is my pick for the months of January and February, and actually it is a reread for me. The first time I read this book, I read it in English, on my own, not for school, not for college or anything like that, just because it's one of those seminal works of literature, specifically Latin American literature. And actually, when I was studying in Paris for a little bit, I picked up this Spanish edition, and I promised myself that one day I would read it in Spanish. So the moment is finally here. And so I am reading Cien Años de Soledad by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This was written in 1967, or published in 1967 rather. Do I have to explain this one? I feel like it's obviously so renowned, so well regarded. It's a seminal work of magical realism. You could even say that Marquez is the founder of magical realism. In short, this book is about the Buendia family. The patriarch of this Buendia family, his name is Jose Arcadio, and he founds this town called Macondo. It's a fictional town, but as you read this story, you realize how much of this fictional town reflects our world. And really, this is a multi-generational tale. It follows Jose Arcadio, but it also follows his ancestors, but mostly his descendants. It's known to have a lot of repetition in terms of names. There are many people here that are named the same name. So far, I'm not having that much trouble with it. Yes, some of them do repeat, but some of them go by different versions of the name. So like there is a Jose Arcadio, and then one of his descendants is also named Jose Arcadio, but it goes by Arcadio. So they repeat, but Marquez at least is trying to differentiate them in little ways, sometimes in personality and all of that. So I know that can be a challenge, but so far I've read this much, and so far so good. I am very much enjoying this. I realized I practically don't remember anything from when I first read it in English, so even better for me. It's like I'm reading it anew. So this will take up January and February. I want to take my time with it and not miss any detail. I did see this very quick sneak peek trailer type thing from Netflix on YouTube. Is there a series coming out? Is there a movie coming out? Was it a joke? I don't know, but I'm a little worried based on that trailer. I feel like it's sacred text. You know, I don't necessarily want some like hokey soap opera-y type of adaptation for it. I guess it can lean towards that. Sometimes the story can, but I think it misses the greater points that the novel is trying to make. So I guess we'll see. Then for the months of March and April, I am choosing a book that was on a previous year's list, and it's called El Beso de la Mujer Araña by Manuel Puig. And this is a pick from Argentina. There is a movie on this book too, which actually looks like a pretty decent adaptation, but you know, what do I know? I haven't actually read the book yet. This book was published in 1976, and it follows two prisoners named Molina and Valentin, and the whole book is told in a stream of conscious way, and it's basically all dialogue with very little markers of who is speaking, which great. This is considered the author's most successful piece. And there's a book that was recently published, Blackouts by Justin Torres, which is inspired by this one or based on this book. So I'm hoping maybe if I have time, I get to that one too, and maybe I can do a little compare and contrast of both novels. I am looking forward to this, and hopefully it's not way too challenging and doesn't go over my head. I am determined to finish this one too. Then for the month of May, I chose a shorter book, and it actually is in a bilingual English-Spanish edition. It is by the feminist author, critic, Melissa Cardoza. It's called The 13 Colors of the Honduran Resistance. The author is of mixed Garifuna and Lenca heritage. Garifuna culture is Afro-Indigenous, and Lenca is just Indigenous, so she has that mix. She considers herself Afro-Honduran. And so what I know about this, it's of course a nonfiction book, and it tells 13 stories of different freedom fighters in Honduras, and Specifically, it wants to show that feminisms are three-dimensional and span multiple experiences, trans, black, elderly, and more. The lessons contained in these stories offer important reflections for all revolutionaries. Yes, reading Latin American literature can be beautiful, but there's a lot of pain underneath that, and a lot of what Garcia Marquez was doing, and some of the other authors that I will mention in this list. Under a lot of that is struggle. So I think it is important to balance that beautiful, rich, referential literature with true stories as well. For the month of June, I've chosen a short story compilation. It was never really published as a standalone collection, but this is by Marie-Madeleine Carbet, and it was translated from French by E. Anthony Hurley. It is a short story piece from the country of Martinique. It includes the short story Obea and also other Martinican stories. So this might be one of those places where you might be thinking, is that Latin American? Well, you know, let's reconsider whether Martinique is part of Latin America. So I'm going to read a little bit from the back just to give you a sense of what this one is about. While analyses of the literature of the French Caribbean have tended to portray the people of this area typically as suffering from pathologies of colonial oppression, the situations and reflections presented in these stories offer different perspectives on the lives and concerns of ordinary Martinicans, and thus provide insight into some of the missing links of the socio-cultural scene. Carbet is one of Martinique's most prolific women writers. I personally hadn't heard of her until I started doing my research for this TBR, and I always love moments like this where I can discover someone new. Like, who knows if this is going to be one of my favorites of the year. Next, for the month of July, I've chosen a book from El Salvador, and it's called Un Día en la Vida, and it's by Manlio Argueta. This one was on a previous TBR list, which I didn't get to, obviously. This depicts a lot of the Salvadorian Civil War from the perspective of a woman named Guadalupe and her family. They live on a farm, they live in poverty, and so this book really illuminated the conditions of people in real life who lived similarly during that time and put the government's military into focus and maybe some of the human rights abuses that they were enacting against the people. This definitely stands in contrast to, I guess, the mission of the previous pick for June. This is very much interested in revealing the wrongdoings that can often be hidden, especially in a small country that the rest of the world might not even remember exists, which is very sad. But I am very interested in what Argueta is trying to accomplish here, and I really can't wait to read this one as well. Next up, for the months of August and September, I'm going to read one book, a big book, and actually I've read this book before in Spanish, but I'm in the mood for rereading this year, so I figured it was good to include this one on this list. So this is a pick from Peru by the author Mario Vargas Llosa, and it's called La Fiesta del Chivo. If you don't know, this book, it was published in 2000, and it is about the Dominican dictator Trujillo. It explores the perspectives of the people who were included in the assassination of Trujillo, as well as it explores the lives of some people in the DR living during this dictatorship, which in reality did include some of my family as well. I do remember having some problems with it when I did read it a few years ago. I'm curious to see if anything changes for me. You know, it's always a challenge and something to deal with very carefully when you are of a different culture writing about another culture. I think I'm gonna just do a lot more research, read more into what Llosa was trying to accomplish here before passing any judgment, and I'm just gonna reread this as if I never read it before. So I look forward to August and September. It's a little bit bigger than the others, so 2 months I will dedicate to this one book. Next up, for the month of October, I've chosen Tierra Fresca de su tumba by Giovanna Rivero, and she is from Bolivia. I don't think I've ever read a book from Bolivia, so this is very exciting for me. And this is a short story collection. It has 6 short stories that are very gothic. According to the book summary, it engages with folk tales, sci-fi, eroticism, a bunch of stuff. So I figured this would be a very appropriate pick for the month of October. It's not outright horror, but it has some horrific elements to it. There is some depictions of violence in here. I'm interested to see how it pairs up something tender with something very harsh and violent. And then for the month of November, I'm finally doing it. I can't believe I've spent my life not reading anything by this author. I have picked a poem collection by this guy. I don't know if you've heard of him, Pablo Neruda, you know. It's a very famous collection. It's called 20 poemas de amor y una canción desesperada. Here it is. It is from Chile, as we all know. This one was published in 1924, so 100 years ago, and it is exactly what it says in the title. Clearly, this is not going to take very long. I don't want my high expectations to be ruined. Sometimes that does get in my way, but you know, let's see. And then for the month of December is a book that I don't own. I'm actually going to borrow the Spanish edition that they have at my library, which is very surprising, but awesome that they do have it. This one is La Cresta de Ilion by Cristina Rivera Garza, and this one is a pick from Mexico. This one will definitely be a challenge because it plays with language a ton. Let me just read you this fabulous summary. Here we go. On a dark and stormy night, 2 mysterious women invade an unnamed narrator's house, where they proceed to ruthlessly question their host's identity. While the 2 women are strangely intimate, even inventing a secret language, they harass the narrator by claiming repeatedly that they know his greatest secret, that he is, in fact, a woman. As the increasingly frantic protagonist fails to defend his supposed masculinity, he eventually finds himself in a sanatorium. Sounds crazy, sounds so original. I know it plays with gendered language and obviously gender in accusing the male or the supposedly male writer that he is in fact a woman. I don't know what any of that means, but I am very excited and kind of nervous to read it. You know, let's see what it holds, but I've seen on Emmy's channel, it was one of her favorite books the year that she read it. I know she, similar to me, we really love linguistic play, so, you know, maybe this will also be a favorite of mine, but I can't wait, and if I do like it, I will buy my own copy. And that is all for my 2024 TBR. I again wanted to be more realistic by choosing not 12 but 9 books this year of varying sizes from a few different countries. This year there are a few more of those big names, and that's mainly because I already own those books and they've just been sitting on my shelf for so long, so I want to get to them finally. But again, this is just 1 year. I can't wait for the years to come to discover new Latin American authors. So thank you so much for watching this video. I'm not sure if any of you have read these books. Maybe you've read the English translations. Let me know which book you're most excited for me to read and for me to talk about with you guys. And let me know what your favorite Latin American book is. I'm very curious to know. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you so choose to. And I'll see you all next time. Bye!